Stefano here from First Reviews. Today I am talking with Fern Levette, who is a documentary filmmaker and activist, and we're talking about her new film, Lucy, The Stolen Lives of Elephants. Fern, how are you doing today?
I'm okay. It's a sunny day, so I'm okay.
It
And
is,
I'm
yeah.
certainly appreciating that you are interviewing me about this important film.
A documentary like this needs to go in that direction. It needs to be hard truth, to let people know what is actually happening when you attend these types of locations like your local zoo. How did you, first start off with the project? Was Lucy the initial spark that kickstarted this documentary?
Well, the beauty about documentaries is we bring to light, truths kept hidden. And I love that expression because that is what's true, and that's why I'm very grateful to do the kind of work that I do. Because I went to zoos and took my kids to zoos and did all of that. And what happened is that someone sent me, who knew I was a filmmaker, someone sent me a picture of Lucy. And I looked at this elephant in this concrete enclosure with painted palm trees, and my heart broke. My heart broke. And I thought to myself, what is she doing? Like, isn't Canada better than this? And ironically, I mean, I've taken my kids to the African lion safari. But at this point in my life, I knew that keeping animals, keeping elephants, well, keeping all wild animals in zoos was wrong. And when I saw her, I thought I have to do what I can to help her. And luckily, I am a filmmaker and I have the ability, and thankfully for CBC and all our other funding agencies that said, yes, make this film. And that's how it started.
So Lucy is currently at the Edmonton Valley Zoo, but
Yes.
you don't just focus on the one zoo,
No.
which is another aspect of the documentary that I really appreciated is the fact that this is not just a local issue. This is not just like a contained problem with one zoo. It is a global issue.
It is a
It
global issue.
it is happening across the planet to all different types of zoos, and you do actually go and visit many other zoos and you
Mhm.
talk to many other people who are currently working at zoos or who have worked. You do also mention in the documentary and multiple times that certain zoos didn't want to speak about the topic or be interviewed in any way. But you do get a lot of people who are interviewed. So my question is, how did you approach different zoos? Why were some willing to say okay and some others weren't?
Well, they all said no.
Okay,
The only
okay.
one that said, we approached every single zoo in North America who had elephants, every single one of them, one in Canada and United States, and they all said no. And only one said yes, the Miami Zoo. They were the only ones. And at the end of the film, we list all the zoos that said no to us. And so, I have the legal right to go undercover. It is our job as journalists to tell the truth, to reveal. And so we went undercover. And, now the cameras aren't so big anymore. So my cameraman had quite a small camera that looks just like a regular camera. And I had a mic that was hidden under my shirt. And that's how they did it. They had no idea that they were being filmed. But that was our way of finding out the truth of what was really going on inside the zoos.
There is a lot of traveling in this documentary.
Mhm.
You know, you do go
Yeah.
to Miami, Argentina, Edmonton locally. What was the process like of traveling to all these different locations and compiling all this data and footage?
Well, I spend a lot of time. I've been doing this for a very long time. I've been a filmmaker now for 25 years, though the last two films are the only animal documentaries I've ever done. So I spend a great deal of time in research. And because I have to find the strongest stories that to bring this to light. So I spent about a year in research looking at the stories that I should be telling, that the audience needs to know, and finding those that are experts in terms of elephants and the impact keeping an elephant in the zoo has on these animals, and those that worked in zoos and were willing to come forward and tell me what they did, what they experienced, and what it was like for them, and how they've changed their life to fight and bring awareness to the cruelty of keeping elephants in zoos. So I really do a ton of research and put a story together and decide who I'm going to interview and what stories I'm going to tell. And of course, if you're doing a documentary, you find the most recognized experts in the field, which is Joyce Poole, Dr. Joyce Poole, who's been studying and writing about wild elephants for years, and Dr. Bob Jacobs, who's a neuroscientist who studied elephant brains in captivity and has concluded through science that keeping elephants in captivity causes brain damage, because you're putting these highly intelligent animals who spend their days roaming with their herd and finding, where the food is. They eat 75 different types of plants and finding where the food is and looking where water is and raising their young, and communicating with each other. So you're taking these highly intelligent animals and you're putting them in a small space away from their herd, away from their families, where they have nowhere to go and nothing to do. And so I needed to bring that awareness, what I learned about elephants, to the public. And that's why I made this documentary. And it actually worked out well for me to film undercover, because the people in the zoos were able to tell me what they tell the public. And what they tell the public isn't true. These are lies that they tell the public so that they can justify keeping these animals in captivity.
Like anyone, I've been to the zoo as well, and you always
Me
hear the
too.
same story. Although they love it in there,
They
they're having
love it.
such a
Yeah,
great time.
yeah, yeah. They love it. We take very good care of them. They belong in zoos. They were born in captivity. They wouldn't know what to do in the wild. Um, and they don't talk about at all how damaging this is to these elephants, how cruel this is, and how important it is to keep these animals in the wild. Because these animals, not just the elephants, but all wild animals, serve a very important role in keeping our planet and keeping our ecosystems in balance. As they're roaming, many kilometers a day, they're eating different plants, and it goes to their bodies, it fertilizes seeds, and more plants grow, and to feed other species. And we know that we need plants, trees, to keep our ecosystem, to keep our planet in good health. So when we take these elephants out of where they belong, which is in the wild, it's not only dire for them, but it's dire for our planet and dire for us. And they don't tell you that. And they tell you
Exactly.
they contribute to conservation. Well, really? What kind of conservation? Because the population of elephants and other wild animals continue to decrease. So they're not contributing to conservation, and they're certainly not educating our children, because if our children knew about how these animals are suffering and what it does to these animals to keep them in captivity, they wouldn't go.
I went to the zoo, a zoo further up north in Ontario, just away from the GTA not too long ago, and I was with my nieces and nephews, and they're very small, and one of them actually asked, "What do they do when it snows?"
Hmm.
And I've asked the question before, and it's one of those things where we just kind of turn a blind eye to what happens here locally when we have terrible weather for half the year. And the what do they have to do with these animals? What do they do with them after? But it's just terrible to think that they just lock them up.
That's what they do.
Yeah,
That's what they do. So, I mean, I had a feeling that they didn't keep these animals outside. I mean, elephants and many of these wild animals that are at the African lion safari, they cannot cope with this freezing weather. So what we did is we used a drone throughout the winter and into the spring. And when you watch the film, you'll see that, what you see as you're driving through in the summer, all these animals outside, and it looks like you're on a safari. It's a complete illusion,
yeah,
because when the place closes down for the winter, as we filmed and used a drone throughout all the winter months, including the spring, we didn't see any animals outside.
exactly,
Yeah, we didn't see any of these animals outside. So what you see when you're driving through, it looks good, but it's only an illusion.
exactly.
And what they tell you when you go to the African lion safari about all the great work they're doing, these animals are mistreated. by just keeping in. I mean, I understand they're not using them to ride in elephants to ride anymore, to perform, all kinds of different, like throwing a ball into a basket. They're not doing that anymore because I'm sure they know they'd be highly criticized for that. But just keeping them in these small spaces and breeding them and sending the elephants away and selling them to other zoos, all it is a money-making business.
Of
And
course.
it's not just the African lion safari. These zoos are a money-making business, and that's what they're there for,
Yeah.
not for the safety and protection of animals.
You mentioned the breeding
Mhm.
part of the whole story, and there's a moment in the documentary that was devastating
Mhm.
to watch as a new parent as well. It was heartbreaking, a very heartbreaking moment. My wife and I were both in tears. Having had skin to skin moment with our son, the thought of our child being taken away immediately was extremely heartbreaking. My question regarding this is how were you able to capture one of these moments on film? Because it is a moment that um, I can't imagine they would allow you in.
Or they didn't. They didn't allow me in.
Yeah,
I want people to understand that elephants are a family, and the females stay with their mothers and grandmothers and aunts and cousins throughout their entire lives, and they celebrate when a baby is born, and the females all look after the baby, and they mourn for days when they lose a member of their herd. So it's very much a family. And what happens in zoos is that these animals don't live as long as they do in the wild. So they get all kinds of different illnesses and they die too young and they don't reproduce as quick as they do in the wild because they're in captivity. They're in an unnatural environment. And and too many times the mother will kill their baby, which practically never happens in the wild. So what they do is they put these mothers on chains and take the baby away from the mother, which is the worst thing you can do to the mother and to the baby, because she needs to bond with her infant and the infant needs to bond with their mother. But they're more concerned about having this baby elephant to keep in that zoo than they're concerned about what the needs of the mother and the baby are. That was on a show on, I believe, and I could be wrong, on National Geographic, and boasting about how wonderful this one zoo is, whose name I cannot remember. And we were able to get that archival footage and you put it in the film because that goes on because they're not able to breed as well in captivity as they do in the wild. The zoos need to keep their herd going, keep the elephants going. So they breed them and use all kinds of artificial insemination to keep the elephants pregnant and breeding so they have more of a supply of elephants for different zoos.
my last question for you is regarding the general public and what they can do to help, stop the mistreatment of animals at zoos, other than boycotting and not attending. What is there anything else they can do? Are there any sort of petitions locally that they can sign? Anything like that that are you aware
Well,
of?
there's a petition for Lucy. If they go on the LEAP website, LEAP is LEAP, there is a petition for Lucy to get her to a sanctuary. And we are certainly hoping that that miracle happens and she goes to sanctuary. But we have some exciting news in Canada. The Liberal government has put forth Bill S-15, which means that they will phase out elephant and great ape captivity. And Canada will be the first country in the world to end elephants, great apes in zoos. And that is really exciting and something that I'm very proud of. But Canadians need to understand that it is not being political about this, that the Conservative government does not support this. And if they get in the next federal election, that bill will die.
Well,
And so if you care about these animals, don't go to zoos, but also vote for the party that is going to end elephant and great captivity, and hopefully other wild animals as well.
Thank you so much, Fern, for your
Thank
time.
you. I really
Uh,
appreciate it.
this documentary is being shown at a few theaters in Edmonton on March 19th at Metro Cinema, March 21st at the Carlton Cinema here in Toronto, and April 2nd at Westdale Theatre in Hamilton, Ontario. So check your local listings, attend this screening, and support this film.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank
And
you.
on CBC,
And
April
CBC.
6th.
Yes. Thank you, Fern. Thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you. Thanks very much. I appreciate it.
Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.